So, hi everyone. I think it's the first time that I'm appearing within video besides the shorts. So I'm glad to meet or e-meet everyone who's following this stream. My name is Gabriele. I'm the webmaster behind the J.League Regista. And as you notice from our YouTube channel or in general from the project presentation, we try to step up a bit the whole operation. And one of the things that I wanted to give it a try out was YouTube. I'm not going to do any video because I'm not really my cup of tea, I would say. But I thought of giving it a try in terms of this specific operation, which is we're going to do a tier ranking or tier list of all the 25 games Japan played at the FIFA World Cup. And we're going to divide them into 5 categories. And we're going to try to understand how much they've been significant for the history of Japanese football. A few more things. I think you're going to see on the channel a few more videos about explaining how the project works, the channels, the website, the social media. You're going to find our activity on Instagram being a bit more important. There are a couple of articles going out in the next days. And Substack will have as well a partial newsletter, which is taking place of the place of This is Football, because J.League basically is done for the 100-year Vision League. And so I don't want to spoil anything, but you're going to see free newsletter coming out after each group stage game. Japan is going to play against the Netherlands, Tunisia, and Sweden. I'm really hopeful it is going to be a nice tournament, but in the spirit of what we just talked about, I think it's time for me to, share my screen. And specifically, so as you might see, there are a few games. As I said, 25 were played by Japan, and I tried to divide the categories in 5 classical ones. So you have Sugoi, which is basically the best performance that the Japanese national team ever fielded or ever shown ever showed at the FIFA World Cup. Yoi, which means good, games that are well remembered but not extraordinary. There's an average. There's a warui, which is bad in Japanese. So the ones we want to forget. And then there are the sayaku, which is disaster. And those are the ones that are absolutely forgettable. And that's why we're going to start, I would say, with the 1998 FIFA World Cup. I like to give also kind of perspective. I'm 37, so I remember all these games because I was 9 when the France 98 went on. And it was actually the first World Cup that I've seen in its entirety and that I remember very well. I have only flashes of USA in 1994. So I very well remember Argentina versus Japan, which was the opening game of the FIFA World Cup in France and the first ever World Cup match for Japan, played in Toulouse. I also recommend seeing on our Substack channel, um, I would say a column called Pitch Turn Memory, which added one game for each edition in which Japan featured at the FIFA World Cup. And Argentina Japan was the opening article. So where to put it? So Argentina won the game 1-0, courtesy of a goal of Gabriel Batistuta. To give some context, I want to evaluate these games on base of the edition that was played, the kind of expectations that were around Japan, the opponent, of course, and the final result. Honestly, given that that was the debut game for Japan ever, after the joy of Johor Bahru, the large expectations, the leaving out Okada, leaving out Kitazawa and Miura from the roster, I think it was very, very important to have a decent showing. And I watched the game again, and honestly, I would put it into Yoi because, it could have been really worse. Like Argentina, in hindsight, probably wasn't like a super great side in 1998. They lost in the quarterfinals against the Netherlands. And I think they were very good up front. They had Claudio Lopez, they had Batistuta, they had Ortega, they had Veron, they had Crespo, I think. But Japan losing only 1-0 and having also 2 free chances without suffering too much, I think it was positive. It was very different against Croatia, honestly. So Japan lost also the second game against Croatia. And basically, what happened is that they lost because of a goal of Davor Sugar, if I remember correctly. So, if I have to be honest, it wasn't a very memorable game, I think. So, I will put it into Warui because, yes, Croatia then ended that World Cup third, which is the best result they had until the 2018 FIFA World Cup when they reached the final. But um, yeah, it was a disappointing showing compared to Argentina, in my opinion. And then you have the final group stage match. Japan lost all three games in France in 1998. But I think we are in the Sayaku territory because Japan lost against Jamaica, a side that actually played their last FIFA World Cup match against Japan because they never qualified again in their history. They lost the train also for the 2026 suspended FIFA World Cup. And I think it was the worst defeat for Japan among the three, not only because of the level of the opponent, but also because at that point, Argentina and Croatia were already qualified. So Japan and Jamaica had nothing to play for, and I would have expected something different. And instead, brace from Whitmore, then first ever goal for Japan by Masashi Nakayama, but yeah, I will put it here probably. So then we have 2002. 2002, I was 13. It's another World Cup that I saw in its entirety. Luckily, at the time in Italy, the public television was showing all the matches. It was the last World Cup like this, and I remember the hours were particularly good for a 13-year-old kid because school was almost over. I remember skipping school one day, pretending to be sick just to watch the opening game, which was around noon. So to watch Senegal defeating France, I remember a lot of moments around that World Cup. It was probably the one I remember more fondly, probably. And we start with the opening match. Also, we talked about it in Pitch Some Memory. We did an episode around, we did an article, a Substack newsletter about Japan versus Belgium. It ended 2-2. Belgium took the lead. Then Japan went 2-1 up, thanks to the goals of Takahiko Suzuki and Junichi Inamoto. And then Belgium equalized. Given other games at the World Cup, I will put it into average because it wasn't expected probably for Japan to win right away. And the whole Trussier stint was a bit harsh. But at the same time, given the results they had, they won a 2000 AFC Asian Cup, runners up in the 2001 Confederation Cup. I think there were a lot of expectations. And once you go up to one, probably you expect to win. Instead, Japan conceded the equalizer to Van der Eyden. It was a stupid one to concede. And so I will put it into average, honestly. Probably it's better to put instead in Yoi Japan versus Russia because that's the first win ever for Japan at the FIFA World Cup. Junichi Yamamoto scored again. It was played in Yokohama, which was also the venue for the final. And I think at that point, Russia was probably at the tail end of a certain generation. In fact, they didn't qualify for 2006. They didn't qualify also for 2010, if I remember correctly. So they weren't exactly a good team, but Russian teams, I remember they were playing a lot in the Champions League. So winning against them was a good testament. It was a tough game, but I really liked it. I think it cemented as well a bit the legend of the three center backs, so Miyamoto, Koji Nakata, and Noki Matsuda. And it was a very good one, but not. And we have for maybe the first Sugoi, Japan versus Tunisia. It ended 2-0. It granted Japan the chance of winning the group. Japan won thanks to the goals of Hiroaki Morishima, Mr. Sarasa Osaka, and Hideyoshi Nakata. I think it's Sugoi not so much because of the game itself. Tunisia were not that good. Um, and also probably there was a lot of expectations at the point building up for Japan, but I liked the atmosphere. The atmosphere was really good. I think they played at the Nagai Park in Osaka, and Morishima scored. Morishima was also at the 1998 FIFA World Cup, but he barely played, or maybe he didn't play at all. And he has been a J-Leaguer of the first hour, a true J-Leaguer. He's not called Mr. Sarasosaka by accident. There's a purpose behind it because he's been a true one club man. And I think it has been pretty good, honestly. And I remember watching the game and thinking, wow, they might have a shot to doing something here. Which brings us to, yeah, Japan versus Turkey. So Japan qualified for the first time to the round 16. They play Turkey, who came second in their group after Brazil. And I would say probably it's the same reasoning of Japan versus Croatia. Were we? Why were we? First of all, it was a very rainy day. Not so many rainy days at the FIFA World Cup in 2002, but that one was pretty heavy. The game was a bit ugly, but it's not like Turkey exactly. I mean, they came third in the end. They didn't reach third place because of their incredible style of play. They were very tough, very resilient. They had a couple of interesting players. I think Anastasia and Almasic, especially during that World Cup, they were doing great things. And so I think, if I remember correctly, Japan hit the crossbar with Alex Santos. There are four times in which Japan reached the round 16 and never got through the quarterfinals. And if I have to be honest, among the four, that was probably the easiest chance of those four. And that's why it's Warui, because I think Japan had a really incredible chance of progressing through. They would have played Senegal in the quarterfinals and then Brazil. I don't know if that chance will come again. So, yeah, that's probably the best, although Turkey was a really good side. So, great 2002 World Cup. We come to 2006. 2006, I was 17. First time I remember I couldn't watch the entirety of the World Cup games because the public television and Sky got their share equally. And I remember watching in the first appearance of internet, like these MPG files of the games, like very pixelish, like 240 pixels, something like this, to watch the results of the game I couldn't watch. And honestly, Japan wasn't that broadcasted at the time in Italy. So what happened is that Japan played their opening match against Australia, and it was a disaster, like Sayako for sure. Also because you have to remember that Japan at the time won the 2004 AFC Asian Cup. They had a decent 2005 Confederations Cup. They had Hidetoshi Nakata, not maybe anymore on the peak, but he was 29. They had Shunsuke Nakamura. They had finally a good number 9. They had Naohiro Takahara. Keiji Tamada was good. They had Yuji Nakazawa in defense. Alex Santos had 4 more years of experience. They had Kawaguchi on goal. So it was a tough group, but if you lose that game like this, especially conceding 3 goals in the last 10 minutes plus injury time to a team that at that time was an oceanic team, although surely Australia had the best generation of their time, honestly, I think it was a disaster. And Japan versus Croatia wasn't too much different. I will put it in worry just because of two reasons. First of all, you didn't lose, because Yoshikatsu Kawaguchi saved the penalty of Dario Sherna and avoided the worst. But you knew already it was basically an uphill battle. And the second one is that honestly, it's the only game that Japan didn't lose at that World Cup. So put it in the same bracket seems a bit unfair. And so we come to the final game. The final game was against Brazil. Brazil were already qualified to the round 16 because they won against Croatia, they won against Australia. I will put it into worry because that's the worst defeat in numbers for Japan at the FIFA World Cup, 4-1. But I don't think that group had any chance of winning against Brazil, even in normal conditions. Although they drew against Brazil, almost win actually. In the year before in the FIFA Confederation Cup, they were in the same group, but the team were not the same. Like Japan was a bit, but Brazil had more players, even more players that they had 1 year prior. In that game, Ronaldo equaled the record of Gerd Muller, and I think Brazil 2006 were very very good, very very good. They were dysfunctional. They were very good, and Japan weren't expert enough to manage that. If you watch the game I have for the Pitchstone Memory newsletter, you can see clearly that Japanese players are running double what the Brazilians are doing, but they're getting half of the results. So clearly there was a gap. And even I think Tsuniyasu Miyamoto, the captain at the time, he didn't play that game because he was booked twice in the first two games and he was out for the game. But He said after the World Cup, we realized that the level wasn't the same. And so we come to a different World Cup, a very different one, 2010. South Africa. I was very eager to watch both Japan and the Netherlands, and strangely, they were in the same group. And at the time, I was able to watch the games because Sky Italy took completely over. So basically, yes, the public television RAI had a few games to show, but not so many. It was a very different World Cup because Japan had a change of coach. They had Ivica Osim, then Osim had a stroke in 2007 after the Asian Cup, and then the JFA decided to take again Takeshi Okada. And Okada actually was about to resign before the World Cup started because the pre-World Cup run was such a disaster that no one had faith in this team. Instead, then Japan versus Cameroon came. I would put it into the average simply because yes, Japan won, but it wasn't such a good game. Yes, Japan scored, I think, around the half-hour mark with Keisuke Honda. He was playing as a lone striker, something that Okada came up all of a sudden. It worked, and Cameroon were not that great at the World Cup, but it was a bad game to watch, to be honest. And it was very different, for example, from Netherlands versus Japan, which I would put as well in an average for two reasons. Yes, Japan lost, and they lost for a goal that maybe Eiji Kagoshima could have not conceded to Wesley Sneijder. But at the same time, the gap was so big. Netherlands will be runners up at the World Cup that Japan being in the game and even having a shot, I think they had a shot at equalizing with Shinjo Katsaki near the end. It was already good. It was already super good compared to what happened in the pre-World Cup run with the friendlies and the qualifiers as well. Which brings us to, at least for me, the second sugoi of this tier ranking because tier list because we talked about it in Pitch Their Memory, our newsletter on Substack, but I managed to rewatch Denmark versus Japan. Denmark wasn't a good side in that World Cup. They were not. Actually, in hindsight, you could say that it was natural that Japan would have come through in the group because they were a better side, both than Denmark and Cameroon. But beating a European side with such confidence, playing with such a tight unit, with those two goals, because the two goals are incredible. Of course, many remember the free kick by Suke from basically Johannesburg, even though they were playing somewhere else, in Rustenburg, I think. But the goal by Yasuo Endo was amazing. There are players in that game who played an incredible game, not just Honda or Endo, Makoto Sebe, Yuji Nakazawa, Daisuke Matsui played a great game, Marcos Tanaka. It was a great game. It was a great night. And I think it cemented a bit also the place for such great figures like Honda and Dodo Kazaki. And so we come to the round 16. The round 16, we have Japan versus Paraguay. I would put it into average. It was a tough game. Really, Paraguay was hard to face. Paraguay will reach the quarterfinals, almost got Spain knocked out. They're gonna reach as well the 2011 Copa America final, losing at the penalties. It could have been you could throw a money in the air and you don't know which team is going through. I remember the Sukumatsui hitting the post, so it was very close. It was very close, but didn't go through. Yuji Komano missed his penalty, and unfortunately, Japan were out. And so we come to the 2014 World Cup. I don't know you, but being a Japanese national team and Japanese football fan for a long time, probably that's the most disappointing World Cup I've ever seen, especially for the expectations. Like with Zaccheroni, a lot of things were going very well for the first 2.5 years. There were signs already of the 2014 FIFA Confederation Cup that something was wrong, but I guess it was probably too late to change anything. Zaccheroni tried, but the group collapsed completely, and you can see that in the game against Ivory Coast, which Japan lost 2-1 after going from Burundi. They lost by conceding two exact equal goals. Basically, they look like the same. And I think it's Warui. It's Warui because I think the next two games are actually worse. We talk about Japan versus Greece. I'm going to put it in Sayako for one reason. Japan didn't lose that game, and that was the only game Japan didn't lose at that World Cup. That's the only game Japan didn't lose at the World Cup. But that was our 2014 newsletter on Substack episode we did, and I think it's unacceptable how Japan played that night, especially because Greece lost Katsuranis for double yellow around minute 35, and Japan created really two chances, and Greece actually almost scored. So that was unacceptable, just like the 4-1 loss against Colombia. Because, like Brazil, basically, like in 2006 with Brazil, you lose 4-1. But I think the worst condition is that against Brazil, it was very hard to imagine that Japan would have won and that Australia or Croatia would have faltered. But what's happened here is that Greece actually won their game and then they went through the round 16, incredibly. Japan played against a Colombia that basically rested their starters and they lost still 4-1. And that's not good at all. So I think it was among these losses, probably for now, this one is the worst against Colombia, probably. But we're going to come to something comparable. We skip 4 years later, Russia. First time that Japan had to change three different coaches in their World Cup run, pre-World Cup run, and they won against Colombia 2-1 in the opening match, in a sort of rematch of what happened 4 years earlier. Thanks, of course, to Carlos Sanchez, his handball, penalty for Shinji Kagawa, the goal by Yuji Osako. Really, really good. Great satisfaction, at least. I would put it into Yoi, keeping in mind, though, that you had a huge hand from luck. But still, it was good. And Japan, I mean, it was 8 years that they were not winning any games at the FIFA World Cup. So it was good. It set the right tone. And I think as well, you can put Senegal versus Japan in Yoi. Because, yes, Senegal didn't go through. And the game ended 2-2. But Japan came back twice, which is something that it was hard for them to do in general. And instead, for a group which had that run towards the World Cup, with the change of coach 2 months before the tournament, and the players being shuffled around because Alilovic didn't like some veterans, he dropped them, and then they came back. Keisuke Honda scored his fourth World Cup goal. He scored for the third World Cup in succession. He's still the only player to have done that for Japan. I think it was memorable anyway, and it was a really good match to watch, even for neutrals. Poland. The defeat against Poland was, I'll say Warui, but Warui only because we passed the group. Because Japan played against Poland, which lost their first two matches. So they were basically out. They needed some luck to go through. Japan didn't just lose. Japan were very passive. Nishino rotated the squad a lot, which I didn't understand. And then there was the famous, yeah, we keep the ball 10 minutes with the Sebe coming in for Muto and Japan just passing the ball around and going through because of yellow cards. Fewer yellow cards than Senegal. But I guess karma had its way to pay us back, which because I'm gonna put the defeat against Belgium in Yoi. So it was a very tough night. Japan played against, I would say, one of the best squads in the World Cup, maybe the best one after France. Japan almost knocked out a squad that came third at the end of the tournament. They went up 2-0. They went up 2-0, and I think they played a really good game until 65th minute. Then Martinez made a couple of changes. I watched the match because of Piston Memory or Substack newsletter, and you can clearly see something is changing in the game. Right after the goal of Vertonghen, something clicked. And then it's a landslide of negative consequences just piling against each other. It was a terrible night, honestly. Rewatching the match was the hardest to rewatch. I wanted to actually close the tab when Chadley scored, but it was still memorable. I think it defined a lot what Japan could be on the international stage. And we come 4 years later, a very different World Cup. First World Cup with a Japanese manager in a long time. First Japanese manager besides Takeshi Okada. We win against Germany. Incredible. By coming back from 1-0 down. I'm going to put it in Yoi just for one reason. This was a memorable win, but if you watch the game, and I haven't done that because I watched another game for the newsletter on Substack, but I remember very well how Germany for 1 hour they were dominating. If they played that game 50 more times, Germany would probably win that 47 or 48 times. Japan and Moriyasu clearly made a good choice in terms of changes and whatever, but I think something was in the side of Japan in terms of luck. This is the only reason why I didn't put in the Sugoi category. I'm gonna put instead in the Sayako the game against Costa Rica, because I think if you win against Germany, you gotta win against Costa Rica, because then you have to play against Spain without any thoughts. Either Spain have to play for their life to go through, and you don't have to do anything, or they both through and you take a game of rest, basically. Instead, Japan rotated a lot, Moriyasu made a lot of changes, and most of all, Japan showed what I think we will see also at the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Japan thought of playing against Costa Rica like they did against Spain and Germany, waiting. But you cannot wait a side that's weaker than you. It's completely messed up. Then Costa Rica found the only chance they had in the game. They scored a very strange goal, very randomic one, and Japan lost. And all of a sudden, qualification was on the line. And here we come to the first Sugoi of this tier, because the game against Spain was just. I cried after we won against Germany, but I cried harder after we won against Spain, because here against Spain there was no luck. Right, Spain was a bit complacent. They felt that they needed a disaster to not go through, because they had a good goal difference on their side. But how Japan faced the game, they didn't suffer as much as it happened in the game against Germany. They went 1-0 down, they made the changes, and they won. And plus, the goal of Autonaka and the assist by Kaoru Mitoma is something that I would enshrine probably in the top 5 moments of Japan at the FIFA World Cup. So amazing. And then we have the last game for now, which is Japan versus Croatia. I would say average, just because it could have been won. Japan went 1-0 up thanks to those in Maeda. They conceded a very stupid goal, in my opinion, by Ivan Perisic. And Croatia, in that whole World Cup, basically just waited for something to happen. And instead, Japan should have done something different. So we close with this one. I hope you enjoyed the whole experience. I don't know if I'm gonna do more than this. Probably not. But it was a test, and I would like to make it possible for the FIFA World Cup, given that we are 1 week away. Please follow J.League Regista on our channels. Visit the website at www.jleagueregista.com and just enjoy the World Cup. I know I will try. It's not an easy one to enjoy, given all the problems that we already seen and we're gonna see from the organization. But I think it's gonna be an important occasion for Japan to rise to their challenge, which is winning the World Cup. So, see you soon and matane.